Hey viewers, welcome to African Tales by Affy. Please kindly click the subscribe button to get notified for more amazing stories. Grace was just 15 when she came to work at the grand house on Rosewood Hill. It was the biggest house she had ever seen. With shining floors, tall windows, and rooms that smelled like cinnamon and fresh flowers, it looked like something from a storybook. But Grace didn't come there to play or dream, she came to work. She needed to help her family, and this job was her chance. Mr. Ethan, the man who owned the house, was kind but quiet. He hardly smiled and rarely talked to anyone unless it was about work. He lived alone. Some of the other workers said he used to laugh a lot when he was younger, but something happened that changed him. He lost his parents in an accident, whispered Mrs. Cooper, the head cook, one evening. Since then, he's been different. Grace always listened but never asked questions. She focused on her work, sweeping the hallways, dusting the furniture, polishing the silver, and folding Mr. Ethan's clothes just the way he liked them. One rainy afternoon, the house was quieter than usual. The other workers were in the kitchen, and Grace had just finished tidying up the study. As she passed by the music room, her favorite room, she heard something strange. It wasn't music. It was crying. Soft, broken sobs. Grace froze. Her heart thumped. Should I go in? She wondered. What if it's Mr. Ethan? What if he doesn't want anyone to see him cry? But the sobs pulled her in. Slowly, gently, she pushed the door open. There, sitting on the piano bench, with his face buried in his hands, was Mr. Ethan. Grace didn't know what to say. She stood there, holding a duster in one hand, unsure if she should speak or walk away. Suddenly, Mr. Ethan looked up. His eyes were red, and his face was wet with tears. For a moment, both of them just stared at each other. I'm sorry, sir, Grace stammered. I didn't mean to intrude. Mr. Ethan wiped his face quickly and tried to straighten up. It's fine, he said, his voice hoarse. You didn't do anything wrong. Grace stepped a little closer. Are you okay, sir? He gave a small, sad smile. Do I look okay? She didn't know how to answer, so she sat down on the floor, her back against the bookshelf. You know, she said softly, when my little brother is sad, he doesn't like to be alone. Sometimes I just sit with him until he feels better. Mr. Ethan didn't say anything for a while. Then he asked, Does it help? Grace nodded. Sometimes, he even talks. They both stayed quiet for a while. The rain tapped against the windows, and the room felt still and warm. You're very kind, Grace, Mr. Ethan said at last. No one should have to cry alone, she whispered. And in that moment, something shifted between them. Not because Grace was just a maid. Not because Mr. Ethan was her boss. But because one hurting soul saw another, and decided to stay. Grace tried to carry on with her duties, but after that rainy afternoon, things felt different. Mr. Ethan had always been polite but distant. Now, he nodded at her more often. Sometimes, he even smiled, a soft, quiet smile, the kind that warmed Grace's heart more than the biggest praise. One morning, as Grace dusted the bookshelves in the library, she heard a voice behind her. You missed a spot. She turned quickly and gasped. It was Mr. Ethan, standing with a cup of tea in his hand. Grace giggled nervously. Oh no, did I? He pointed to the top corner of the shelf, far above her head. She squinted. You're just teasing me, aren't you?" Mr. Ethan chuckled, a real, honest laugh. Grace's eyes widened. It was the first time she had heard that sound. "I haven't laughed like that in years," he said softly, more to himself than to her. From that day, Mr. Ethan started talking more. He would ask Grace about her family, about her favorite books, about why she liked the music room so much. One evening, as the golden sun poured through the windows, he found her playing a soft tune on the old piano. "You play beautifully," he said from the doorway. Grace jumped. I just taught myself. I hope I'm not in trouble." "Trouble?" Mr. Ethan walked over and sat beside her. "You've brought music back into this room. My mother used to play here every morning. After she passed, I couldn't even walk in." Grace looked at him gently. "That's why you were crying that day?" Mr. Ethan nodded slowly. "Yes. I miss her, and my father. It felt like losing the whole world in one night." "I lost my grandma last year," Grace said quietly. "She used to tell me stories every night. I still hear her voice when I close my eyes." They sat in silence, the sadness between them soft and real. Not heavy. Not scary. Just understood. But not everyone in the house saw their friendship with kind eyes. In the servants' quarters, whispers began. "Did you see how he looked at her? She's just a maid. What does she think she's doing, playing the piano like she belongs here? Mr. Ethan has changed. Ever since that girl started talking to him." Grace tried to ignore it. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was just being kind. But one day, as she entered the hallway, Mrs. Cooper caught her by the arm. "Grace," the cook said firmly, a word of advice. "Be careful. People are talking." "I haven't done anything," Grace said, her eyes wide with confusion. Mrs. Cooper sighed. "Sometimes, it's not what you do. It's what people think you're doing. You're young, and Mr. Ethan is, well, he's important. Some don't like seeing the two of you becoming close." Grace felt her stomach twist. She didn't want to cause trouble. She just wanted to help. To be a friend. Later that night, she sat in her small room and stared out the window at the stars. "Maybe I should stop talking to him so much," she whispered to herself. "Maybe it's better that way." But the next morning, when she passed the music room, she saw Mr. Ethan waiting inside, a book in one hand and a hopeful smile on his face. "Would you like to read with me, Grace?" he asked. She hesitated, her heart full of questions. Then she stepped into the room. Because sometimes, doing the kind thing meant being brave even when people whispered. A week passed. Then another. Grace and Mr. Ethan continued to talk, to laugh, and to sit quietly in the music room where the light always seemed warmer. They read books together, shared memories, and even played piano duets, Grace with her gentle touch and Mr. Ethan with his slow, steady hands. But outside that peaceful room, the storm of whispers grew louder. One cloudy afternoon, as thunder rolled in the distance and the air felt heavy, Grace found herself called into the sitting room by Mr. Howard, the old house manager. He stood tall, with gray hair and sharp eyes. He rarely smiled. "Sit down, Grace," he said, his voice stern. She sat, her hands folded in her lap. "I've received complaints," he began. "Some of the staff say you've been too familiar with Mr. Ethan." Grace blinked. "But I haven't done anything wrong, sir. We just talk." I play the piano sometimes. That's all. Mr. Howard narrowed his eyes. You're a maid, Grace. Not a guest. Not his friend. You'd be wise to remember your place. Her cheeks burned. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but the words stuck in her throat like thorns. Go back to your work, he finished coldly. That evening, Grace avoided the music room. She didn't go near the library. She stayed in the kitchen, helping Mrs. Cooper with dishes until her hands were red and wrinkled. Grace, the cook said gently, you must be careful. But don't lose your kindness. That's what makes you special. Grace nodded, holding back tears. The next morning, rain poured down in thick sheets. Thunder cracked across the sky, and the house creaked as wind rattled the windows. Mr. Ethan didn't appear at breakfast. Or lunch. Grace tried not to worry, but something felt wrong. At last, just before dinner, Mrs. Cooper pulled her aside. Go check on him, she whispered. No one's seen him all day. Grace hurried to the west wing, her feet slipping on the wet floors. She knocked once on Mr. Ethan's door. No answer. She knocked again. Still nothing. Mr. Ethan, she called, her voice trembling. Slowly, she pushed the door open. The room was dark, except for a small candle flickering on the nightstand. Mr. Ethan was sitting on the edge of the bed, his shoulders slumped, his face pale. Grace rushed in. Are you sick? What happened? He looked up at her, and her heart broke. His eyes were red again. His clothes were wrinkled. And there was a letter crumpled in his hand. I got news this morning, he whispered. My uncle passed away. I'm so sorry, Grace said, kneeling beside him. Were you close? No, he murmured. Not really. But he raised me after my parents died. He was the last person I had from those years. Grace touched his arm gently. You're not alone, Mr. Ethan. I'm here. He closed his eyes. You shouldn't be. You've heard the rumors. The things people are saying about us. Yes, Grace said bravely. But I don't care. He looked at her, surprised. I care about what's true, she said. And the truth is, I see your pain. I see your heart. And that matters more to me than gossip. He didn't speak for a moment. Then he said quietly, Grace, when I first met you, I saw a girl with soft eyes and quiet footsteps. I didn't think you'd ever see the real me. But now, you see everything. I do, Grace said. And I'm not going anywhere. Just then, lightning flashed outside, followed by a loud crack of thunder. Mr. Ethan smiled for the first time in days. You are braver than anyone I know, Grace. She stood and straightened her apron. And you're kinder than you let people see. He took a deep breath. Come with me. There's something I want to show you. They walked together through the halls, past the whispers and the stairs, into a small room Grace had never entered before. Inside was a grand table, covered in papers. This is the household office, Mr. Ethan said. And this is where I need help. Grace blinked. Me? He nodded. You know this house better than anyone. You see what needs fixing, who needs help, and how to make things feel alive again. I want you to be my house manager. Grace gasped. But I'm just a maid. No, Mr. Ethan said softly. You're more than that. You always were. The next morning, Grace stood in front of the tall mirror in her tiny room, smoothing out her dress. It wasn't a maid's uniform today, it was a soft blue dress with pearl buttons, given to her by Mrs. Cooper, who had pulled it out of an old chest with teary eyes and a proud smile. You've earned this, Grace, she had said. More than anyone. Grace was nervous. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. She was no longer just the maid. She was now the house manager of Rosewood Hill. As she stepped into the grand hallway, the house felt different. Not bigger or richer, but warmer, like it was watching her and cheering her on. Some of the staff smiled at her. Some didn't. A few whispered behind her back, but she didn't flinch. She remembered what Mr. Ethan had told her the night before. People may doubt you, Grace. But never doubt yourself. In the office, Mr. Ethan was waiting. Good morning, he said, standing beside the desk with a steaming cup of tea in his hand. Ready for your first day? I think so, Grace said, smiling. He handed her a notebook. Your ideas go here. Big or small. She took it with both hands, holding it like treasure. As the hours passed, Grace walked through every part of the house. She checked in on the kitchen, asked the gardener how the roses were doing, and even helped young Annie the scullery girl when she dropped a tray of silverware. No job is too small, Grace reminded her. That's what makes a good leader. Annie beamed at her. By lunchtime, even the grumpiest footman, Mr. Bell, had nodded at her in approval. That afternoon, Mr. Howard approached her. I suppose I owe you an apology, he said, his voice stiff but honest. I was wrong about you. Grace smiled gently. Thank you, Mr. Howard. I never wanted to take anything. Just help. He looked at her, paused, then added, and you've done just that. But the biggest surprise came later that week. It was a sunny day. Birds chirped in the trees, and laughter filled the gardens as the staff enjoyed their day off. Mr. Ethan asked Grace to join him for a walk. They strolled under the rose arches, through the path her grandmother had once described in a story, and stopped beside the old fountain. This house feels alive again, he said, watching the water trickle down the stone. That's because you opened your heart again, Grace replied. He turned to her slowly. It wasn't just me. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Grace's eyes widened. No, he said quickly, noticing her shock. It's not what you think. He opened the box. Inside was a silver key. This is the key to the house, Mr. Ethan said. It was my mother's. She said to give it to someone who makes this place feel like home again. Grace looked up at him, her voice shaking. You're giving it to me? I am, he said. Because of your courage. Your kindness. And your belief in me when I didn't believe in myself. She took the key slowly, her fingers trembling. I never thought. I never dreamed. He smiled. You changed my life, Grace. Not because you were a maid, but because you were you. And I don't want you to just run this house, I want you to be part of my future. If you'll have it. Tears welled in her eyes, but they were happy tears. I'd like that very much, Mr. Ethan. He laughed softly. Maybe it's time you stopped calling me Mr. Ethan. She grinned. All right then, Ethan. From that day on, Grace walked through the halls with pride. She was no longer just the quiet girl in the shadows. She was the heart of Rosewood Hill. And Ethan? He was no longer the lonely man with old pain in his eyes. He was someone who had healed, who had grown, and who had found a friend, and something more, in the most unexpected place. As the sun set behind the hills, casting golden light across the windows, the house stood tall and peaceful. A place not of riches, but of love, kindness, and second chances. Hello tribe, hope we enjoyed today's story. Please kindly put what you've learned in the comments section. Please remember to hit the like button, share this to your friends and family as well as subscribe to see you on the next one. Bye.